The hero hoped that he understood what he was implying. For the Emperor, all the nobles around are like hyenas, and he never knows if they are using his knowledge for his benefit or against him. So, it's unclear why he would want to make his rival stronger. At that moment, Father said, "Then let it be a secret passed down to the circle of the imperial family." The boy was glad that his method of training would be passed down from generation to generation. Imperial lineage with a familial fighting style sounds awesome. At any rate, all of the Emperor's children would now be forced to train hard, and this was also his chance. It's been a whole month since that conversation. His Majesty the Emperor practiced, thinking that it was simply unbelievable. Yet it's true that his son's method really works, and he has maximized the effect of his training. And it was Errol who developed this unique style. Too bad he's too weak to use it. However, this child has proven to be so incredible that the Empire definitely needs him. Soon, the protagonist learned that he had something he needed to do. Chaperones must be chosen. In fact, there are plenty of suitable candidates, and there were a sea of applications. Here are those who have been approved by the Emperor himself. Errol immediately looked at all the papers, and realized that most of them were from noble families. Just a couple years ago, they didn't think he was human. Now he's become quite popular. That's not surprising, though, and it should be. Given his skills, he doesn't need guards at all, but something he doesn't want to reveal, or it's his life will end as sadly as his and his past. The prince asked if it was possible to just pull out 3 random sheets. The interlocutor replied that he could do anything, but it would still be better if His Highness chose someone himself. The boy agreed and thought it was nice to be on the other side of the interview for the first time. These resumes include all personal information, skills, accomplishments, and more. If sorted out this information, and even too much, he wished to save his eyes, for he would need them later. And if he does have to choose, he'll prefer the lovely ladies for that. I think about this, he began to laugh slyly, causing misunderstanding from those around him. Next he yelled out that he was going to start a search. But inviting the knights was a bit of a surprise. Right in front of him were all the candidates. They literally shouted in one voice to greet His Royal Highness. Errol felt some kind of eerie and incomprehensible aura. Says he really can't argue that they are all women, but the fantasies were more racy. One of them asked the prince if something was wrong, for he had turned sharply pale. One of them asked the prince if there was anything wrong, for he had turned pale, and I thought it was his own fault for being deluded. This is what first-class knights who train every day should look like. Enough daydreaming, and we should get down to business. So I informed the dear ladies that the interview was starting. They began to introduce themselves, and the prince thought he would come out invalid, powerful, and visibly stronger. He was horrified to discover that there was someone else more muscle-shifting than the Emperor. If she would protect him, he would definitely be safe. Soon one interesting resume caught his eye. I began to wonder who it was that made her look like a common aristocrat, compared to the others more feminine. He really didn't have anything to pick on. Everyone's answers were excellent. So he asked candidate K to wait outside, and he needed to think for a while. Naturally, they agreed and bowed before him. Then they left the room, leaving him alone. Errol wondered what he should do now. The choice was not an easy one. So decided it was necessary to focus, release internal energy, and distribute it throughout the body. It will be a secret technique that stimulates your brain to make wise decisions and help you make the right choices. This ability is not easy to activate, and it takes a lot of training and effort to reach enlightenment. Haven't used it in a while after all, and need to start round 2. For this, he asked the candidates to grab one each. The reason he was using this ability now was to find out the intentions of every knight who came to settle into his personal guard. One of them he looked to have dark intentions. The next one also didn't impress me in any way, so they were immediately dismissed by him. Now these eyes will see the inner world of a person. He doesn't need a lie detector to tell the difference between infidels. He can see what shade of emotion they have. He still needs those who want to become knights for him, that it was their personal choice. The knight he liked had finally arrived. Look at her. The boy was a little surprised. We didn't see a single dark spot. The name of this girl is Asya Pernil. Despite being a knight, is completely pure. Her biography would have to be read, and perhaps Errol had missed something. If it has nothing to do with him, though, why bother at all? At least she's pretty. But he still invited the next candidate. He realized that apart from Asya, he didn't like anyone else, and it was necessary to choose at least 2. That's why he decided to take Ms. Muscle to himself. He would follow her like a stone wall. At that moment, another girl arrived, greeted His Highness, and said that she was the last one, and her name is Sena Galil. Errol marveled at how radiant she was. She looked good, but the aura was a little disconcerting. He decided to question her a bit, so he asked if she had served overseas for a while. It says here that she changed many knighthoods, then wondered why. She smiled and noted that she was ashamed to admit that she couldn't stay in one place for long. The prince thought she was just being harassed from everywhere, but no negativity he sees from her, he doesn't think. She fits his criteria quite well. She just loves to travel. That's why she gets transferred all the time. That's all he needs to know. Hiro said the interviews were over and wanted to say he would call them back, but realized he was in the wrong era to talk about. That's why he said that he would announce those who had passed. They were Asya Pernil and Sena Galil. Just like that, the interview was over, and the boy had successfully added to his flower garden. On my right hand is Asha, and on my left is Sena, and she is extremely serious at work, by the way. Then it was probably a good time to put his girls to the test. They asked why the young prince had brought them here. He noted that he would like to see their skills with his own eyes, so is asking to show everything they can do. Realizing no matter how strong the knights were, he would make them even stronger. And to do that, you just have to probe the ground. Asha agreed and thought it was only fair that the Lord wanted to make sure of their strength. However, she wondered how they should show it to him. The boy stated that there was nothing complicated. They could just fight each other. They, in turn, happily agreed to spar even on the first day. Errol was sure they were somewhere on the same level. A duel would determine who he would be more attracted to as a woman. So she wants the show to start soon. So excitedly stated that he would like to see who was stronger and more capable. It was clear that knightly pride was at stake, so no one would want to lose. And when asked which one of them was stronger, Sena said she was curious and asked what Asha thought about it. She indicated that she would like to find out as well. It was clear to the boy that the atmosphere had heated up and a heated confrontation of searing beauties awaited him. I can't wait for this battle to start. I just wish I'd brought popcorn. Sena asked if there would be any rules to their battle. At that, Asha didn't think it was necessary and asked what the prince thought of it. And he really thought that bare-knuckle fighting was the best part. So he said he just wanted them to show him their strength. Sena noted since it was the Lord's will to hold back, she wasn't going to hold back. Her opponent has also indicated that she will not be delayed. Unlike some, she doesn't brag about what she doesn't have. Arel realized that the atmosphere was strange. They must be serious about tearing each other's throats out. So, to calm them down a little, he asked them not to do any more damage, and they'll only start after he claps his hands. Only he did so as he flew aside, for the carnage slowly began. Then he found out that these girls are just plain crazy, but it's clear that they're knights, so it's better to stand quietly on the sidelines. But he has to evaluate their skills somehow. It turns out that Asha has quite powerful and sprawling attacks. If she hits her opponent's target, it's not going to be pretty. That said, though, Sena is no slouch either. You can see it in her eyes. She reads the movement and dodges. I guess it's instinctual. As the battle progressed, Sena smiled, stating that this was a chance. So she promptly rushed to attack with her bare hand, thinking that her opponent was caught. Arel knew the closer to the enemy register, the harder it was, and attacking at the same rhythm. And now he wondered what she would do. The girl, too, realized that she needed to proceed in a different style, so kicked her opponent with her foot to push her away. Sena didn't expect that, saying that her spear-wielding was impressive, but she was pretty good with her legs as well. Asha pointed out that a true knight himself has a weapon, so this base. The prince thought that a heart-to-heart talk had begun between them, but after a few moments I realized it wasn't. A little more blood was going to spill, so we had to stop them. So he shouted for them both to stop. He's seen more than enough, and they've done well. And he got an idea of what they still needed to work on. In short, Asha is too impatient, which he didn't expect her to be. Sena, on the other hand, is rather limited in her attacks because she prefers fist-fighting. Asha noticed that, after all, Prince Errol was training the second princess. That means he has to show his skills that you train them. The boy thought that indeed ever since his sister added magic to her attacks, she had become quite famous among the knights. So informed that it was true, since they were his personal knights, he should help them become even stronger. Therefore asked if that was what they wanted to do. Naturally, both girls agreed only if it didn't bother him. Trying to put a price on himself, the prince said it was like a hobby. He himself would enjoy training such gifted ladies. Since they're a team now, he'll make sure they reach unprecedented heights in knightly craft. And then they start a special training camp immediately, so let them follow him. And so Errol's training camp began its first class. Sena asked what they were going to train here, since it was too small for sword fighting. The prince said that he would lecture them here. They want to get stronger, so they'll start with the basics. Time had a book of his own writing called The Path to the Heights of Chivalry. If his theory helps the ladies, he'll sell it to other knights. Asya noticed that they were honoring her, but she didn't understand in what sense they were supposed to spread mana throughout her body. Neither did Sena understand it either. But Errol knew that the world of theory was cruel. He reported that he understood everything. After all, bare theory could do little for them, so he would explain everything. The amount of mana contained in the body is different for everyone. One may have more mana than the other two combined. Also, mana has its own circulation pathway of his body as well as his blood. If this pathway is established, they will become stronger with any amount of mana. Physical strength, seasoned with the right amount of mana, will increase their potential many times over. Right now, they're just wasting their energy. One of the girls said she had a question. What is a lemon not to spend? Whether it will accumulate, and whether something bad can happen in this case. The prince immediately tried to fake an explosion. He said he didn't know what to do if they didn't use mana and only hoarded it, they would die. Although it's really just a joke. They need to save up mana. It is necessary to gather the natural energy within yourself. Let them learn to accept and conserve nature's energy. After that, they will learn to use it. Even just buying it within themselves, their abilities will increase greatly, he promises that. The knights said they were clear and would fulfill what he wanted. Then Arrow let them know he thought they understood, so the theory class came to an end. Have them head for him again. And so came the second training lesson of Camp Arella. The prince said Sena would go first. He wanted her to feel her aura throughout her body. The girl was a little embarrassed, not stating that she didn't know how. But the Lord stated that she should control it in her whole body. Let her try it with 2 hands. At the same time, he saw that she was only using 1 hand. But for most people it is quite difficult to cover their whole body with aura. Usually people focus on the parts of the body they need and learn to control one flow. No matter how the girl tried, it didn't work. She reported when she tried to use their energy at the same time, the spaciousness dissipated. To cheer her up, the hero asked her to try again. He touched her palms and asked her to focus on the aura and feel it throughout her body. You need to direct her to the point of contact with his palms. At that, the boy gradually began to feel her up, saying that it was almost working out. Soon it did indeed happen, and both hands were covered in mana. Sena said she understood everything. The boy had such soft palms, she was even jealous of them. Errol felt like a rodent in the grip of a bear, and he asked me to stop talking nonsense, and to focus. As the composed self worked out, she said she now understood everything. Thanks to those amazing hands, she had it all worked out. The hero thought, does she really realize that just because of this? She's probably got sawdust for brains. He doesn't know what to expect from her next. Still, they moved on to training lesson number 3. The prince said that Aja was in too much of a hurry. In the recent fight, when Sena had gotten close to her, she had simply thrown her foot forward on automatic to regain distance. He couldn't argue that she had talent, but that was the wrong approach. In battle, one should not act hastily and should analyze everything first before fighting. The girl apologized for interrupting. But was this really part of her training? She dragged him on her back, but the boy didn't understand what the problem was. Then Aja said, honestly, she thought it would be difficult for her. The prince noted that he would explain everything to her, so let her focus on herself and her feelings, but let her not forget about him. She needs to stay calm and move on. Nothing should get in the way now. When the Empress night came, a report was brought in. She complained that she'd been pestered by Arel lately. All she heard about was her. It's the child of a concubine, so she didn't really pay much attention to him, since he hadn't bothered her so far. But now it still wouldn't hurt to get rid of him soon. By late afternoon, Asha was continuing her training. She certainly knew that under His Highness's guidance, she was indeed becoming stronger. At first it was just exercise, and she didn't expect much. But then it became different. She's Asha Pernil, daughter of a ruined aristocrat's family. This is too great an honor for her, so it's unclear if she even deserves such attention from the imperial family. The Pernils had never been particularly wealthy. They lived on a small estate in a cramped but not abusive environment. That was until monsters came into their land. The head of the family shouted to his relatives that he would distract them, and they would run away as soon as possible, for they could not stay here. The family had to leave him behind, and that was the last time Asha saw her father. When their family lost everything, the nobles instantly turned their backs on them. In the end, she decided to join the ranks of the knights. Thanks to her talent in martial arts, she quickly learned everything and even mastered the aura of the sword. She was assigned to the 15th Company of the Imperial Army, the lowest-ranked unit known to exist. But that wasn't the biggest problem yet. The worst part was that at the head was an obnoxious commander with a very weak aura for such an age. When he saw the girl, he greeted her and said that he had prepared some special training, so let her begin. To him, she looked a lot like a daughter, so he said he wanted to hug her. In the end, he even suggested that we go out to dinner, just the two of us. Remembering this man, the girl became very angry. For just as then, he is an abomination to her. Too bad you can't chop it up so you never see it again. In a fit of desperation, she applied for the position of personal knight. But who would have thought she'd be accepted? Thanks to this, her family's life is getting better. She needs to save some more money so her little brother can go to the academy. It was only because of His Highness that so many good things happened to her, so she should definitely repay him. As for Sayana, she said that she had applied for the position of personal knight earlier. The interlocutor sarcastically stated that she only had to go there, given her irrepressible energy. She smiled, saying it would be really cool. In Senegalil's family, one mercenaries who have made a career out of it for years. She grew up among them, constantly moving here and there, for they led a nomadic life. The head of the family once said, as the girl already knows, the last war in the Empire was 30 years ago. Despite the peaceful skies above their heads, it had its disadvantages, because their family made money from the war. It may happen that she will be out of work, and she should find something else to do just in case. He said that he would talk to those old men who insistently wished her a future as a mercenary. Let her go her own way. She was still young and had her whole life ahead of her. The daughter remarked, if her father insisted, it was settled. She will find her business and will definitely come back. Just like that, Sena made a decision and left home. Night training came easily to her. The only hard part was the death of her father while she was away. He had a falling out with a corrupt lord and was brutally murdered. The girl thought he was a stupid father, though she had no right to talk about him like that, because she was all over him, completely out of control when it came to her interests. She found the man who killed her father and beat him up, saying he was a bastard just to line his pockets. It's unclear why he made the nomads look like criminals and ordered them eliminated. He probably has no conscience. The man begged for mercy, but he never got it. Remembering about this situation, the girl still did not regret anything, and even on the contrary was proud of herself. Since then, Sena has been sent away on various pretexts. It got to the point where she was deliberately given the most difficult missions, which eventually led her to try out for private security. Sena is lucky, and she's happy with everything here. His Highness may be lazy, but he's definitely very smart. Every time she looks at him, she thinks he's really cute. She just wants to pet him. He's just an adorable boy. She, in turn, must pay His Highness for the opportunity given to her. As they continued to train hard, the girls thought about how great it would be to protect the Lord for the rest of their lives. Arel Aranesia, though not strong in martial arts, is still brilliant in his own way. He was able to create unprecedented curiosities and support the economy of the empire in this way. He even helped the second princess more than anyone else, uncovered her aura in such a short time thanks to his theory. So he's a very wise and educated man. At this point, he is 13 years old, and all he does is nothing. At another meeting, the emperor was informed that the third prince would turn 14 next year. A coming-of-age ceremony awaited him. Count Tempest said, since the third prince had performed well, he thought it would not be unreasonable to give him the proper authority during the ceremony. The emperor asked about it, and the interlocutor confirmed it, stating that he was old enough to show himself in government. Theorel wondered if they meant to say that he should give Errol the lands. He was told that he had understood correctly, but that he was not already entitled to territories. His Highness slapped the table, and thought that these people were just a rascal. To think that they are the only ones who want to exile Errol far away. At that moment, the Count said that the prince had become a very famous figure, both within and outside the empire, and perhaps His Majesty was planning to make the third prince his successor. These words made the emperor even angrier. Rising up, he slapped the table hard, asking what nonsense they were talking about. How many times he and all need to be told the heir to the throne will be the first prince. All the more reason for Arl to have no interest in ruling. Then Duke Gast addressed him, asking His Highness not to be angry. But word of mouth spread his achievements across the continent. The aristocrats have already formed a faction supporting the third prince. Thus, things are not at all in favor of the first heir. Public opinion is very fickle. While he's in the capital, many will want to see him on the throne, even if they don't say so explicitly. Does he remember that time, the previous time the situation happened? Theorel interrupted the speaker and said that he could continue, but he was informed that it was not only their opinion. Many aristocrats are concerned about the situation. All they want is stability in the empire. The emperor realized that they were all talking about the same thing. They probably wouldn't give up so easily. All these nobles definitely want to get rid of Errol and exile him away from the capital, and surprisingly, that's the desire of the majority. His Highness was once again asked not to disregard their opinions. Then he was forced to say that he would try to honor the request. If he found a suitable territory for him, he would send him there. After receiving the news, the hero wondered what had happened during the meeting, that everything turned out like this. They give him his land from the emperor, so it's pretty clear he's being chased away. He wasn't sad about it though, and just started to smile. He was happy that he would finally have his own land. So, has it all come to pass already? He doesn't care about the throne, not with so many hyenas around him. A territory with a steady income is the way to go. The guy realized that it was just a dream of his own house on his own land. So he did what he had planned a long time ago. Fahilia is placed in the lands of the north. It snows all year round. In such a cold place, you can easily freeze to death. The hero realized that there was not even land ownership here, and the nobles had done their best. To top it all off, his departure date is a month after his coming-of-age ceremony. He only has 1 year left, by which time he should have everything ready. He informed his people that they need to know once they move. They will be on their own. So it is necessary to prepare for difficulties. If they want to leave, he can help them find a new job. And those who cook because of him should continue to work together. People shouted with one voice that they would be together with him. Arel realized, fortunately, most of the people would follow him and the entire alchemist team as well. Sena was disappointed that out of all the places, it was Fahilia that had been chosen. Hearing her indignation, the boy asked if something was wrong. The girl noted that everything was fine. She had just been there for a year on duty. This surprised the young prince a little. The knight went on to say, "It's not really dangerous out there, just brutally cold. Even the monsters don't poke around there, so in general it's fine." Arel thought unnecessarily, forcing himself to look on the bright side of things. If his wife responds like that, then it's really cold there. and now it's clear why that's where the noble assembly wants to stick him. He went on to state that it wasn't that bad. To be honest, he thought they would send him somewhere worse, like some desert with bloodthirsty monsters, or to some volcano with a fire-breathing dragon dwelling in its vent. If they want to get rid of him, acting is probably the best way to do it, so it's all nothing. Looking at the girls' faces, he didn't understand what was wrong with them, so he asked about it. They stated that they would protect him no matter what, and then it became clear that they had misunderstood him. Soon, when the guards were on guard, Asha asked Seinu to tell him the truth. But the girl did not understand what she was talking about. She noticed that she was talking about her story. Seina asked if she had noticed, though she thought His Highness realized it too. It's just like she said, it's really very cold there, and it's also wilderness. The reason the knights sent to Fashilia back then was to destroy the monsters that had escaped there. I looked at the reaction of my interlocutor. She asked if she really wanted to stay. But Asha said indignantly that she'd had enough of joking. She, in turn, would follow the Lord wherever he went. She just didn't think he would be put out so soon. Seina, for her part, thought there was no cause for concern, because she saw the look in his eyes. His Highness was definitely up to something. No matter how much she looked into his eyes, she couldn't see any despair or disappointment in them, and that's why she's sure that everything will be very good. Asha said that she understood everything, and thought she would have to send a letter to her relatives. That's what her interlocutor was going to do. At this time, the protagonist was glad to be done with the documents and blueprints too. At the same time, he is not clear what to do about his mother. She hasn't told him anything, but I'm sure she's very upset. Even though he's ordered not to tell anyone what territory he's been assigned, he's worried about his mother's safety. And Kanya's too. Something needs to be worked out. Some kind of sphere needs to be created to communicate with her, or an emergency teleporter. Perhaps a specialist needs to be hired. That's a problem, because you have to think things through very well. Plus, you probably need to start preparing for the move early. But isn't this harsh land the perfect place for a professional like him? Soon, the first step of preparation for exile began. The lined-up wizards asked His Highness how they could help him. The hero saw the familiar Payon, and realized that he had brought his students. Earlier, he asked to find the magician, but who would have thought that he would turn out to be his old acquaintance? He further asked his interlocutor if he would keep it all a secret, and he swore he wouldn't tell anyone anything. Holding out a sketch, the gentleman said he wanted them to do something on short notice. The wizard wondered what it was because it was clearly something out of the ordinary, and he was simply dumbfounded when he familiarized himself with the prince's plan. That's why he asked His Highness if he'd designed it himself or if someone had helped him. Errol pointed out that it was his idea, an updated version of the Sage Necklace. This artifact that activates a person's brain, similar to the one he gave to Kanya. Payan this time found out, according to these schemes, the effect will be twice that of the original, but the production costs only 1/10 of the cost. It is unclear how the young prince came up with such an ingenious idea. The boy was just asking if they could do it, or if it was too complicated. The wizard said that the blueprint was perfect, so it wouldn't be too difficult to make it. However, since he is familiar with creating the original artifact, he has a bit of difficulty. The hero realized that he is afraid to create an improved version of someone else's artifact, and he is going to relieve him of his insecurities. So pulled out a pouch filled with gold coins and declared that it would be his for silence. Soon another one came along, and this one was for materials and labor costs. And there was also a health bonus and money up front to participate in future projects. The man just couldn't believe his eyes. He and his disciples bowed before His Highness and told her they would do their best for him. Aurel was really satisfied. As expected, money was the best way to solve all problems. So let us know the cost is fine, and he will wait for the results. He wants them to do the work within a month, so wondering if that's possible. Payan stated that the man would just provide it to them, and that was it. The boy realized that this man's favor was worth the cost. From that moment on, he was at his beck and call. Later, this man and his apprentices arrived and claimed that they had made the new necklaces of the Sage of Srebrelas as he had ordered, and the hero asked not to be called that, while thinking about who would have thought they would finish the job in only 10 days. Though now he knows their true potential, and the quality is excellent, so Payan did a good job. He further said that he was satisfied with everything, and now it was time to start mass production. The man asked how many copies he needed. Pointing with his hand, the gentleman informed him that 50 would suffice for the first time. The wizard reported that he understood everything, and let only him provide it to them. But his subordinates were simply shocked. Sent the new subordinates to work. Boy thought they needed to live in his skin too, and then they wouldn't be so fidgety. After that, it was time for the second step of preparation for exile. At nighttime, he and his knight rode in a carriage. Asha asked His Highness where they were going. If he needed something, he could order them to get it, and that was it. Aurel said they wouldn't help with that. He needed to choose for himself, so he was going personally. The girl kept wondering, but what they were ultimately going for. The young prince had no choice but to reveal that the place they were headed to was a slave market. This really surprised the interviewer, and she didn't hide her surprise. She asked what other slaves. She had a strong feeling that she was being held by authority, but the boy noticed that she misunderstood him. In her opinion, he had to chase the slaves, calling them pathetic to get them to work. Errol couldn't believe she'd seriously thought that about him. It had to be something like that, and by the end of it, it means what she thinks of him. The girl had no choice but to apologize. Though what else comes to mind when it comes to buying slaves? It's a hell of a lot of screaming and crying, and maybe even a shameless theft of children from their parents. But in reality, it turned out to be quite the opposite. Upon seeing the place, the boy said it was much cleaner than he expected. Asha reported that if the slaves get sick, it will be a big problem, so we need to keep an excellent eye on that. That's when a representative of the place came to them, stating that she was absolutely right. It was a place of carefully selected and healthy labor force. He has noticed that their role market is truly great and multifaceted, and he welcomes His Imperial Highness Prince Errol. He further informed him that he was the manager of this place, and let him call him simply Yang. The boy pointed out that there was no need to address him by his full title, for he had brought him here as a client. Besides, he looks who has heard of him. The interlocutor said that it was natural, therefore he should be especially courteous to him, so he asked to proceed. Their organization abides by the laws impeccably, so you shouldn't question it. They sell and buy labor exclusively. That's why the prince doesn't have much to worry about. As he continued, Asha told the gentleman that they were mostly those who couldn't pay their taxes and were in debt. Arel asked if that was how one became a slave. The girl noted that it was true. It was sometimes the only option to avoid starvation. Ian went on to say that most of the guys here are just like that. Although there are some thieves and criminals. But he doesn't have to worry about that. They aren't offered by them. The hero wondered if he knew he was coming because he had prepared for this visit. And there's nothing to dig into. In his office, the manager asked His Highness which ones he wanted specifically. Prince stated that he needs different ones and more, and asked if that would be a problem. The interlocutor noted that this was true and asked how much he needed. The answer dumbfounded him, for he had heard that 150 at least were needed. Looking at this reaction, the hero thought it was a lot. But the man said that it was not so easy, would have to draw on the resources of branches outside the capital. But they would find it with no problem. At that, he asked if he could find out why he wanted so much. Errol asked not to worry. He wasn't planning anything terrible. And there was only one request. He wants the man to divide the slaves into groups of 4 or 5, based on their kinship or familiarity. Ian said that the task was not easy, but it was not uncommon for an entire family to be sold into slavery. With a flick of his finger, he summoned the subordinates that had brought the information to him, and asked the gentleman to familiarize himself with them. Prince stated that is not a bad thing. Those who can read are listed separately and that will come in handy, and further asked if he could send them to the places he needed them, to which he agreed. Arel said that a deal had to be made and asked Asha to bring the gold. She brought him in, and the slave manager immediately blossomed. He shouted that it was a pleasure to cooperate with him. From that day on, he was their most privileged customer. Then the hero realized that money really does decide everything. Soon they were on their way home. Asha asked if he was still not going to say what he was going to do with the slaves, especially in such numbers. The guy noted that he wanted to replenish the human resource of his new lands. And the more of them there are, the much better. There's hardly anyone living in that desolate land. Then what's the point of being lord of a land with no people? And the slaves he bought will make that start. Only 50 pieces so far? He'll gift the artifacts to each family and train what they need. Then they will be more productive and pay for themselves quickly. The girl was surprised again, and the boy noticed that she had a perpetually surprised look on her face. He, for his part, is not going to die quietly and peacefully out there in the cold. We need to find a way to maximize the life of the territory that belongs to him. Also thought it would be for the benefit of my own comfort. It's all about an idle life of abundance. We need to recruit and train people in advance so that there will be someone to run errands in Fahilia. Let everyone just wait a little while. Never see everything for themselves. After a while, the boy thought it was bad when the chick flew away from the nest. The hardest part is the moment of saying goodbye to your home and loved ones. While he was thinking about it, his mom knocked on his door and asked if he was busy. He asked her to come in. He immediately saw her saddened face, and Lifana rushed to his side and hugged him tightly. She asked if it would be possible to speak to His Majesty again. The son pointed out that it doesn't need to be done. Let her not worry about him. He will write to her often. Besides, they have a whole year in reserve, so there is no need to cry. Just like that look, he sent her away. And also thought about having to keep the place he's being sent to a secret, and he'll only tell her the moment you're all set. That way she'll be less worried about him living on his own. Kania's training was even more furious than usual. The girl couldn't believe what had happened and said it was unacceptable. She screamed, stating that she refused to accept it, and, glaring angrily at her sparring partners, asked the next one to step out. Even though they were scared, the girl told them to hit with all their might. Otherwise, they will be seriously harmed. Kania didn't think Errol would just leave the capital like that. All because of those pesky nobles. She, for her part, could understand the situation on the boy's part, but could not accept it. And the most dangerous part is that he's known about it for 6 months. But he only told her now. So, is it because he thought it was impossible to change anything? In fact, he just didn't want to talk about it, as he knew she'd get really pissed off. The princess was really angry, because she couldn't just let him go like that. Her sparring partners were even more wary, for they sensed a strong aura. When emotions run high, mana swirls up inside the body and pours out. It was exactly as Errol had planned. On that day, the youngest swordmaster and the third strongest in the history of the Empire was born. The reason for this was her obsession with her younger brother. But, of course, no one will ever know. The protagonist suddenly remembered his first life. It happened because of a familiar feeling. Before he went off to serve, time flew quite fast. But after he got the subpoena, it was like it slowed down. And now the boy realized that the feeling was recurring again. At this point, he was already 14 years old. The banquet for his coming of age was in full swing. Those present congratulated His Highness, noting how much he had grown. The boy thought he needed more soporific speeches than anything else. He thanked Sir Parnell, for his wisdom would be remembered forever. He realized how much he was fed up with him and hoped he would just disappear. Compared to his first birthday, it was hard to breathe in the hall now. Age had allowed him to pretend to be asleep then. But now he had to smile and wave, feeling ridiculous while doing so. Those present felt that it was a celebration not only for the Lord, but for all the citizens of the great empire. For many, however, it was also the day the prince would finally leave the palace. Errol had no doubt that was what they thought. He was annoyed by their pretense, and another congratulatory message only reinforced that feeling. For a moment there was the thought of making a little fuss. But as soon as his mother, who was nearby, turned to him in a whisper and waved her hand, it was clear that while she was watching, it was necessary to behave with dignity. In a month's time, all these people will be a thing of the past, and he will no longer see their faces. In honor of the farewell, he is willing to show them a little mercy. The Empress also arrived with congratulations, marking his entry into adulthood. She reminded him that he now has his own lands, which is an important development. It was also mentioned that Lafana was likely upset. The thought of her presence at the royal feast was not a happy one, but it was not unexpected. He wasn't going to express his opinion, so he just gave a neutral answer. In any case, the parting was inevitable, and therefore there was no point in dragging it out. The woman added that Zale would also miss him, as he had improved his sword skills greatly thanks to Errol. As a token of gratitude, the Empress decided to give a gift. The hero was sure in advance that it would turn out to be something suspicious. However, he was presented with a fox fur coat, naming it one of Fahilia's most famous goods. The predictability of what was happening only confirmed his hunches, making him wonder about possible hidden agendas. There was little doubt about it, though. Zale wasn't one to readily accept anyone's help, much less thank them for it. A person with enough power and the right support is quite capable of getting things done. However, wasn't it obvious who was behind it all? It seemed like just another taunt, presented under the guise of an exquisite gift. Any outrage would only put him at a disadvantage. Therefore, keeping calm and smiling sweetly, he expressed his sincere gratitude to his elder brother, and promised to personally thank him later. Regardless of the distance, they were united by blood, which meant they would always support each other despite any obstacles. Elia noted that it was an act of generosity, but the boy replied that he didn't see it as a big deal. He knew he had to keep his temper in check. But the urge to get even with the culprit right here and now was too strong. One could only hope that the day when they would have to tell each other the whole truth would never come. After a while, the protracted banquet finally came to an end. Arel seemed to have forgotten something, but there was no way he could remember what it was. At that moment, a girl sitting nearby caught his attention. It was Kanya. The boy wondered if she had always been so quiet. It seemed she was still angry that he had informed her of his departure too late. You should have apologized before you left. The girl interrupted his musings, and he couldn't understand what exactly she was up to. The expression on her face was too strange, as if she were about to do something crazy. A gut feeling told me that she was preparing something unexpected. It was obvious that her act would create more trouble for him. At that moment, the princess approached her father and addressed him. The man remarked that this was not the best time to talk, so he suggested that the discussion be postponed. However, the daughter insisted, claiming she had to say it right now. Her next words shocked everyone. She declared that she was going to follow Errol. This statement really surprised everyone in attendance. This surprised even the protagonist. He couldn't understand what she was thinking. He wished the girl's mother would enlighten her daughter. But she seemed to be preoccupied with something else. Although, when you think about it, you could expect anything from her. The Emperor was furious, saying that it was no longer funny. He wondered if she really had nothing else to do since she had decided to follow her brother. Arel thought he was saying that in vain. Of all the Emperor's children, Kanya was the most stubborn and determined, especially when it came to arguments. However, the question remained as to why she would follow him in the first place. The girl suddenly declared that she was going to be his personal knight. This surprised him even more. The emperor interrupted her abruptly, saying he had had enough, and demanded to know if she knew what she was talking about. In his opinion, it didn't matter how good she was with a sword. However, Kanya objected, arguing that it was the most important thing, as she had only recently reached the level of master. Her words caused even more amazement among those present. Even Errol was stunned to hear this news. Theorel couldn't believe it at all, for Kanya was only 19 years old. The only other person who had reached that level at that age was the late emperor. To demonstrate her strength, the princess grabbed a weapon from the nearest knight, then stated that if she wasn't believed, she was prepared to prove it, and suggested that anyone who valued their lives should step away. After saying those words, she immediately released a powerful stream of mana. Using her power, she extended the blade. Then, in one motion, she cut the cake that stood in the distance, along with the table. Errol couldn't believe what she was doing. For all present, however, the spectacle was enough. They realized that Kanya had truly reached the level of a swordmaster. It seemed incredible considering her young age. After that, the princess calmly informed her father that she had been thinking about this decision for a long time, and now she had finally made up her mind. She didn't want to marry a man she didn't even know. Far better to follow Errol into unknown lands and help her younger brother on his difficult journey. She preferred the path of a knight and protector, seeing it as her true purpose. The hero was pleased to hear that. It seemed that one more word and he would let out a stingy male tear, but it was better not to bring it to that. She was literally giving up her role as princess in front of everyone. While it may have seemed like a joke, the consequences clearly did not bode well. The guy wondered if she really realized the seriousness of her decision. The case was gaining momentum, and there was no getting away with it now. She didn't know what the hell had possessed her to do this. Suddenly it dawned on him. It was actually he himself who had encouraged her to do such a thing. However, now was not the time for regret. He had to stop her. But as soon as he spoke, Kanya declared that if that wasn't enough, she would prove her resolve. Turning around, she headed toward her younger brother. Then, holding her weapon in her hands like a true knight, dropped to one knee in front of him. She pronounced that the sword that had accompanied her throughout her life would henceforth be her support in the future. She dedicates it to her younger brother and takes a knight's oath to him. Kanya Ernizia vows to always be at his side and remove any obstacles in his path. From now on, she will be his loyal knight until death do them part. Those present were discouraged, realizing that they had just witnessed an actual oath of knighthood. The protagonist wondered if this could be considered valid, because officially the sister had no right to do so. She had not yet received a knighthood and had not agreed with anyone. There was one problem, however. It was that too many people witnessed what was happening. A knight's oath is far from empty words, especially when it comes from a master swordsman. Anyone who's been here will take it seriously. It was unclear to Errol whether she did it on purpose. From the outside, it looked like caring for his younger brother, but in reality, he realized that this act was paving a better future for him. The bewildered expression on the emperor's face spoke for itself, as was the condition of the girl's mom, who almost passed out. But it was another individual present who was the angriest of all. It was the empress that thought she was about to get rid of the problem. But now there was another one. Errol saw her angry face and he thought it was funny, but he couldn't understand why the tears were coming. He was still thinking about it for the first time on, looks like his birthdays are doomed. End in some shit. So never going to celebrate them again. After that unfortunate day, things continued to go on as usual. It was time for Errol to leave. He packed his things and began to say goodbye. The maid and his mother came out to say goodbye to him and told him that time flies very fast. It seems like only yesterday he was born, but he is already very old. He informed everyone that he would be visiting her, so you shouldn't worry about him. Lifana then informed him that he has no idea how much she cares, especially when he remembered how often he cried as a child for any reason. The boy wondered if he was even a crier, though it didn't matter now. His mother kept saying that his body was quite weak. If anything happened, let him seek medical help immediately. Errol noted that he understood everything, and everything would be fine. Next, he was going to tell the place where he was sent, but his mother said she didn't have to go on, because she already knew everything. This surprised the boy, and he wondered if she knew, and he had kept it all a secret. Lifana saw his surprised face, and asked how could a mother not know something about her child. Then the boy realized that it was true. They were all helpless in front of their mother. The woman informed her it didn't matter at all where they were sending him, because he was the smartest boy she had. So she won't say how worried she is about him anymore, and just asked my son to be more careful. The boy was very pleased to hear that, so he asked his mom to take care of herself as well. Family separation is always sad. Even though the boy could return at any moment on the shower, it was hard. Soon the caravan with him had already arrived in the snowy lands. This is the northernmost part of the Empire's frozen land at the foot of the icy mountains. The guy is going to conquer these lands that no one dares to set foot on. Soon he couldn't understand who had sent him here, for he definitely wished him dead. He shouted that it was okay though, because even in a volcano he would find a way to survive. Of course, who was riding along with him shouted that he'd had enough of the bullshit. The boy thought that the magical items for heating knew their business, and it was warm inside. And his sister asked why he had spent so much money on heating artifacts in the carriage, and it was so warm. He didn't understand who would say that. Didn't she even know that a dress in this cold was at the very least illogical? Next, he used the power of his own eyes, and he realized his little sister was using a mana cocoon. He hadn't taught her that, so it must be self-preservation instinct. He stated that the sister's abilities were truly astounding. Kanya asked what he meant, if not everyone could do that. Arel asked her not to ask people for the best, because they might get punched. He further inquired if she would regret going along with him. The girl was indignant, talking about whether he was already tired of her company. She grabs his cheek and he informs her that he wasn't talking about that. He asks if she regrets her decision to stay with him. Kanya decided to go north with him as his personal knight. He spent a whole day talking the emperor into excusing himself, but even so, she didn't want to stay and went with him. The princess thought for a moment, then said she had no regrets. She thinks it's a great opportunity. She also asked if she'd ever told you about it. If she had stayed in the palace, she would definitely have been married off this year. Errol, I get it because she's really 19 now. I'm surprised she wasn't married off sooner. I can see why she wanted to go with him. Her sister, like him, doesn't like restrictions, so it's understandable. The girl now pleased him and informed him that she would be free from that day forward. The hero asked, and who she was chosen as a groom. She noted that she did not know because she refused without even looking. Let him consider himself wildly lucky the wedding didn't happen. She would have made his married life unbearable if he'd tried. The boy thought it was true. Let this unknown guy say thank you. After a little while, they finally did arrive at the new owned property. The protagonist had 1,000 soldiers at his disposal, and there were also 200 slaves who would become the new residents of the place. He also has his entire retinue of alchemists and maids. Thus, he was immediately going to set about creating his own paradise. First, the defense of Fahilia must be established. This task fell to Asha and Sena. As for Kanya, as much as the boy feels sorry for her, he doesn't want to give her the job. It's just that she'd tear up the knights' barracks in no time at all, and she'd be fine with it. However, she herself worked with Nevsky's army of your concern. The total population of Fahilia is about 10,000. They are all scattered around 12 small villages. The first thing the hero thought to do was to make a road to them. Most of them are hunters and gatherers who have lived here for centuries. No one has moved in or out of here for 100 years, so the population has continued to drop. This area is not just poor, it is on its way to oblivion. The palace doesn't even collect taxes from them. They just blacklist the place and ignore it. I wonder if there was even a cantata landlord here. Suddenly he found the ledger, which meant he was only with the lands after all. He didn't do well. Because of the shortage of money he had borrowed, he would have been mad in no time. The hero thought it was just bullying, and he had already decided it couldn't get any worse. At least he's doing some good. He's an example of what Errol better not become. You have to do everything yourself and hope there's something to see. There aren't many people, but there are a lot of trees, and wood is good. It may be necessary to try to produce paper. Paper is a valuable thing in this world, so it's worth a try. His other products are still selling steadily, so there's nothing to worry about. On that, he decided the right to meet him. If the past lord turned out to be a fool who rules this territory in vain, boy, they sure need them. So he ordered all the village chiefs to be gathered. It is necessary not to miss a few of them and be sure to bring them to him personally. After quite a bit of time, they all arrived at his place. Arel immediately began evaluating them. As expected from the inhabitants of the Ice Valley, they are all well-fed and strong. They could tear wolves apart with their hands. Upon arrival, they greeted the new lord. The hero introduces himself, stating that his name is Errol Ernesia, and he asks to be remembered well. He also promises that he will be a lord for them to rely on. He realized that in their eyes they were just a child who had been empowered. She probably didn't believe him, but he won't let them look down on him either. So he turned to one of the headmen and said that he looked quite young. He had asked only the headmen to gather, so this was unacceptable. The interlocutor immediately fell to the ground and said that his father was the headman of his village until last year, but passed away, so he took his place. The gentleman reported that he understood everything. That being said, he knew it from the reports he had been going over all night, not that he wanted to get to him. But he just wanted to let them know that he was the authority here. The boy went on to say that they were going to have a long conversation. They must have been very tired on the way here, so why not continue the conversation at the table? Those present were a little surprised at such a statement. The hero knew what low-class people hated the most. Of course, it's lunch with the boss at the boss's desk. You can't eat a normal meal. Truth be told, he didn't really want to eat anything. I mean, look at the faces on those headmen's faces. To lighten the mood, he asked why they were so tense. The youngest headman said that they were very happy. Errol wasn't particularly fond of this atmosphere either. They couldn't imagine how much he had been preparing for this meeting. Soon one of the attendees did open his dish and was amazed. The hero indicated that he'd like to treat them to something better, but that's all he has for now, and they immediately shouted to him that he was wrong, for they were already grateful to him for this one. The boy realized that these people agreed with whatever he said, but it's really a simple dish for now. He doesn't have a lot of money for luxury food. The headman, who tasted the meat with surprise, asked if there was added salt. Arel knew very well that salt was very valuable here, and salted meat is considered a delicacy. Despite being a lore of such people, eating what they do, he shows his closeness to the people. After all, he wants to be a wise lord to all these people. The boy further reported that he thought the former lord had given them quite a bit of trouble. If the lord doesn't consider the opinion of the people, it's pretty hard, but it's going to be different now. In his opinion, continuing to do what they have been forced to do for 10 years is a road to nowhere. Hunting can certainly feed them, but it can't go on forever. That's why from now on, he will give them some instructions that will seem incomprehensible. The only thing he can do in this situation is to ask in advance. He immediately stood up and told them to just trust him in whatever it was. Looking at him, those present realized that His Highness was very cool. They thought he was really like a great prince. Arel asked what it was that they had made up for themselves. There was no need to build a cult around him. Either way, he wants them to follow his instructions. If they do their best, he will let them and their men forget about the endless foraging for food. Already now he wanted to communicate the first decree. He knows that they are already aware of it, but he wants them to welcome the people he has brought with him. The hero knew that the slaves needed to be dispersed to their villages and settled. They were all freed and could live here in peace with their families. Those who are good at something will work directly for him. An old-timer reported that they could accept them easily, but the question is whether other residents would accept them. The Lord knew that even if they were freed from slavery, the status wall was hard to break down. From the residents' point of view, they are just outcasts. But he asked them not to worry, for only asking without self-mutilation, and not for that easy. Thus, he hopes that they will be able to negotiate it. The interlocutors were a little wary of this, and said they would do their best. The meeting was soon concluded, and the headman left the fortress. The young head of the village asked the older one if the past lords were the same. He replied that compared to the previous ones, he thought this one was still a bit strange. Most of the lords showed no interest in this territory, since these lands were like a place of exile for them. The last lord tried to do something about it, but he ignorantly made a lot of trouble. A lot of people even got hurt back then. And now a new lord has arrived. A young boy who just recently had his coming-of-age ceremony. So the man at first thought it couldn't get any worse. Thought about why he had come here. He hoped that at least he wouldn't do something stupid like the previous lord. But looked at this boy's eyes, he understood everything. This man is not like everyone else. The interlocutor asked if there is hope for them now. The old man noted that he didn't know that. They would see, but for now they would have to trust him. Soon the knight brought some kind of paper to the lord. He was lying on Sena's lap, who asked if he was looking through the papers that the servants had already sorted out. The boy noted that it was true he had some things to check. When he first took possession of the land and the population was about 10,000. But after checking, it was 9,651. Including the villagers, whom he had counted, it was about 9,800. The girl noted that the decrease in population here was quite natural. Still understood it and said, while the Lord was changing, the leakage was already in full swing. But I wonder where they go now. The number of newborns is also quite small and the poverty of the land is to blame. The hero realized, even considering his fortune of 450,000 gold he had brought with him and his expenses to settle the money would be enough for 50 years. These aristocratic and necessary purposely shoved him here to wallow in the mire of local problems. I'm sure they're hoping he'll die soon. The hero noticed, so the girl says farming is not an option either. She reported that it was true. The former lord went bankrupt precisely because he ceased to develop farming here. The boy then informed that the rascal was originally dumb. Next thing I knew, I was thinking that only gathering and hunting were possible. So are these really the only options for earning money? Suddenly he had a great idea. Time to take advantage of a plan very skillful hands. And so he set out to bring about the first reform for the dying territory. And the place to start was the road. There are potholes everywhere, which causes a lot of accidents. And there are no signs or any semblance of a fence anywhere. In short, no one has ever taken care of the roads here. Soon the people from the villages received the plan to develop roads in Fakilia. Someone reported, they say, that the Lord is hiring people for the job and promises to make it all happen. So that's what they were talking about the other day. Since all expenses will be covered by the Lord, why don't they give it a try? So they soon led to the appointed place, and were really surprised to see what was going on. The man reported that he thought it would be quite a massive undertaking, judging by the plan. Errol stated that it is fine even if it takes longer than what is stated. He is still paying them as much as they will be entitled to. The new workers thanked him for it and said they would do their best. And the boy thought that the power of money was colossal. And now he was really enjoying it all a lot, because he is very much into watching others work, but only from the sidelines. But such is the truth of this world. If you want to eat, earn. Soon his road was already built. He informed the employees that it was a great job. Now the people can be reached comfortably, so let them keep working. The second reform was directly related to the dying territory. The hero arrived at the merchant and the merchant asked what other trading company. He doesn't know about other places, but Fahilia is bad. The boy only grabbed him and held out a pouch of gold coins, asking him how about just doing his job. At that moment, the interlocutor could not refuse him. Arel knew he needed to start by establishing a trade in essentials for the locals. He will give them orders from the trading company he runs. This will attract not only locals, but also itinerant traders with exclusive goods. A trade indeed, this would be a big step forward. Finally, it was time for one last reform for the dying territory. Putting the papers on the table, the hero asked Darman what he would say about it, if it was possible. The alchemist looked and asked the prince if he really wanted to produce paper. The guy nodded affirmatively and knew that paper certainly existed here, but it's of poor quality and placated by simply steaming the pressed fibers. And even this technology is from abroad, so no one in the empire knows anything about it. Because of its high price, only people of high status can buy the paper. It seems that the hero has only seen it in the Imperial Library. Most people use parchment paper, and then only in dire necessity. Darman stated that paper is certainly a valuable item. He thinks its production will turn out to be very profitable. But the problem is that no one knows how to produce it. Does the gentleman have such a development? The hero immediately smiled and asking would he offer such a thing if you were not her. The interlocutor, though astonished, said it was expected of him. But what about the competitors? Lord stated that they are not a problem. They will produce a brand new paper. If the alchemist wanted to contradict him now, just let him take a look at this special equipment they were using. Taking the document in his hands, the man was simply amazed. He reported that this equipment, and flawless, though he doubts they could build it themselves. They're experts in alchemy. It's one thing to make chemical elements and medicines, but designing machines is a different matter. The local blacksmiths could hardly forge something like this. Though if they were dwarves from the capital, then it would be possible. Errol had completely forgotten about the dwarves. There's not a few of them in the Empire. Besides, they take orders. They say they can do anything, no matter how complicated. After weighing everything, he reported that it was a great idea to spend the money. It was his job. But his subordinates asked His Highness to reinstate himself. Dwarves are not the kind of people in front of whom you can mindlessly shake money. The hero asked if they didn't like money because it was strange. Darman reported because of their pride they would rather order, and where they can show off their skills. This, the gentleman was not happy about. And the man went on to say, if they didn't like him, they would easily refuse regardless of the amount of money and the identity of the customer. Arel wondered if the pride in his own craftsmanship was too exorbitant. He wondered if someone really thought of the experience and knowledge that could be gained by working on an order instead of the high pay. And if such orders dry up, they are probably going to starve. Suddenly the alchemist said he would ask his fellow dwarves about it. The prince rejoiced, telling him to give it a try. They were sure they would be interested in this blueprint, so Errol laid it all on him. A few days later in the gnome village, the forge was bustling with work, as usual. The old man shouted, "No idling! If they didn't finish this job, there would only be more tomorrow." Suddenly, the master was informed that he had received a letter. He asked what kind of letter, if it was from those imperial scoundrels again. I wonder what those obnoxious princes want this time. Let him send them, for he has everything scheduled until next year. This old man's name is Aiken, and he is a blacksmith. The guy wasn't going anywhere, so the old man shouted out if he couldn't hear him. The interlocutor hesitated and said it wasn't that simple. The sender is an alchemist who came to him 10 years ago. The blacksmith realized who he was talking about and asked if it was Darman. The letter came from Fahilia, wondering what he forgot there. We'll have to see. After reading this, the master stood still for a few seconds. He further informed Ben that he was leaving everything to him for a while. The subordinate was surprised by this. Aiken, on the other hand, stated that he needed to discuss it with the rest of the guys soon. Ben wondered if there was something so important in the letter. His face changed so quickly. I wondered what it said. Soon many dwarves were distracted from their work. They asked the old man what the hell was going on. They had a lot of work to do and he called them here. If he has so much free time, and let him just have a drink and relax. One of the blacksmiths asked what all the fuss was about. The old man said it was very simple. There's an interesting drawing here. The customer is from Fahilia, and he is also the designer. One of those present wondered if he was saying such a thing. Don't let it be said that he called them here for this. Aiken remarked that he thought so too at first, that it was just another piece of nonsense. But let them just look at the blueprint he has. From what they saw, those present were simply amazed. Aiken remarked that he understood their surprise. This is the blueprints of the paper machine. I wonder if they remember how 5 years ago a guy from the East wanted to create something like this and approached them. The interlocutor remarked that it had happened. After all, they never lived up to his expectations. Then he was so humiliated that he almost put the hammer away. Aiken played on this, and remarked that Fahilia now had the development of a machine that they had failed to create 5 years ago, and they need their help in realizing the project. Those present were immediately interested, looking at him. Then the master smiled and said if they didn't want to, he could handle it himself. But who declared that would not be the case, and they have plenty of work to do without him. Aiken asked out of his own laughter, for his students would handle it just fine on their own, and he would be handling this project, so I wonder who would be with him. A silent pause hung in the room for a few seconds. The men started breaking in, saying they were in, and they even started fighting already. Aiken realized, as expected, everyone wanted it. The blueprint had them all very interested. In order to calm those present, he shouted at them, asked them to cover their mouths and plug their heads in. It wasn't clear what would happen to the forge if they all left, so he would only take half. And now it is still necessary to decide who will go and who will not. Smith agreed with him, but asked how it would be resolved. Soon Ben arrived at the master's house and wanted to ask something, but inside the room he saw a real beating between the dwarves. If you can't negotiate, you need to use your fists. Such is the holy rule of the dwarven blacksmiths of Aiken. Eventually Ben realized that the fight was starting again, so he'd stop by another time. While at his manor, Arl thought it would take at least 5 days in the new one to give his answer. I wonder what he would do now. Of course he's going to rest. As if there's anything better than that. Lying around and loafing is sacred and let the world wait. Next, he just decided to take a little nap. Suddenly he heard some terrible sound that disturbed him. Arel rose indignantly, not realizing who was there throttling over his ear at such a moment as this, out of spite. Suddenly he saw Fry at his window and was amazed, not realizing it's happening to him. He can fly, of course, but not with such speed and trajectory, and besides, he's not too high. At this time, Kanya was trying to catch her griffin. Fortunately for the baby, she was successful in doing so. The girl declared that this is the way to fly. She would help him, so let him fly. After saying that, she immediately launched it upwards with all her might. Arel walked up to her and asked what she was doing. I wondered what the pet had done to her, if it had torn her dress. The girl didn't understand what he was talking about, because he didn't do anything. The hero then inquired why she was bullying him. The sister indignantly stated that she was not bullying anyone. She's just training him, because someone has to do it. The boy wondered what kind of training, because this was a nightmare. If one were to delve into the backstory, it was at the very beginning of the distribution of duties that Sister Kanya was a bit left out. The princess's daily routine is first thing is food. Next, she's off to train her abilities. And of course, at the end of it all, a nap and then a repeat. That's how the one who can't stay in one place for too long has a lot of energy stored up. Naturally, she decided to take it out on the whole plant on a frolicking Fry. Caught in the act, if I may say so. Now, Kanya was saying that he would become a riding beast in the future. Therefore, it is necessary to develop his speed. Her brother asked how on earth she was going to do it. Not by throwing it. The sister again indignantly said that he had misunderstood everything, and therefore let them stay out of the way. The hero wondered if her brain had atrophied as her muscles grew. Seriously, she needs to be taken out before it's too late. Give that destructive energy some kind of outlet. Although it made him cry on his vacation. I wonder how the brothers and sisters are having fun. How many lives he never realized. He had blood relatives in his past lives, but their relations could hardly be called warm. The most normal relationship was one in which they never spoke once until they died. He's a pro, of course, but something went wrong here. And that's when he took the griffin away from his sister. Then he tossed him up and told him to fly away from here. Kanya asked what it was he was doing, and the boy replied that he was saving a poor griffin. Next, he thought, it's never too late to learn how to be an educated younger brother. So stated, since Fry has flown away, he wants her to play with him. The game they chose turned out to be chess. He defeated Errol by checkmate. My sister was clearly not comfortable with this game. She screamed hysterically that she couldn't play that. The boy couldn't even think about the chessboard being flipped in his face. His sister at that moment kept yelling that she didn't like the game, and he could at least pitch in for decency. Then Errol thought that he didn't want to play it himself, but entertainment was scarce in the north. At least chess would keep him from getting bored. So he asked Kanya not to be angry, and suggested he try again. Also have her use the artifact he gave her. It would help her think more broadly. Though thought she wouldn't be helped by his experience playing chess 100 times more than the average person. Perhaps one should really give in to her. Soon they began a new chess game again. The princess continued to pick a move and thought long and hard. A friend of the protagonist noticed that the magic stone around her neck was cracked. Afterward, he noticed that sister was very angry. She pulled out her weapon and shouted that she didn't want to play that. And because of the words she said, she cut the chessboard into 4 pieces. Arel reflected that chess was the most suitable option to pump the mind. The girl further remarked that it seemed that they would never play chess again. The brother remarked that it was understandable. She had broken the board. Then he realized he didn't even know what else to play with her. I had to think of something. To do so, I asked her what she usually does. Thinking briefly, she stated that she works out a lot, so maybe she needs to work out. The guy didn't like that prospect. wondering if she was training all the time, if she was bored. Such a fidgety person, he could never have a good rest. And he had to think about what to do in this situation. And while he pondered, both their stomachs began to rumble. That's why the guy said it was lunchtime. So asked if my sister wanted to try cooking something together. She was really wary, wondering if he wanted to cook. The boy noted that he really wanted to answer that. It would be fun. Kanya then asked if it was mandatory. The hero didn't realize if she was definitely a knight. They are required to be able to cook food for themselves after all. Since ancient times, knights have been more than just guards. They went on expeditions to destroy monsters, and they last for over a week. So does the girl think she can starve for all that time? Moreover, if you don't know about food and its processing, you can easily get food poisoning. Cooking is an important aspect of everyone's life. Therefore, it is imperative for the sister to learn how to cook. Kanya felt very sad about it, yet it still agreed. Errol asked not to worry about the party and would help. She also thought it was a great opportunity, but it was kind of weird, of course, teaching her older sister how to cook. He's her little brother, after all. Soon they arrived in the kitchen, and the boy asked if she was ready, which got an affirmative answer. He then announced that tonight's meal would be a meat stew. It is a fairly simple dish that is prepared with a moderate amount of ingredients. It is the most common soldier's army during a camping trip. It is simple to prepare, and most people like it because it is the most ideal option. The boy just hopes that everything will turn out okay, and it will not come to food poisoning. Next, he watched intently as his sister chopped vegetables. Speaking of coping, she handles them pretty well. The sister pointed out that it was easy. Brother reported the next step when she has chopped all the ingredients is to put them in the pot. Next, let them add some seasoning, and cooks until the ingredients are no longer raw. Soon their dish was ready. It was the first one Kanya had ever had. The girl happily announced that it had turned out and asked her brother if he liked it. The boy remarked that she was really not bad for a first-timer and wondered how she was doing herself. If she learns to cook even better, she can handle a hike of any length and in any terrain. So he thought that was the end of the task of entertaining his sister. Once he had eaten, he would lie down and take a nap for an hour. Just as he was thinking that, he was approached by a subordinate. He was very excited and dirty, talking about how he had some urgent news for the prince. The hero pondered telling her not to bother him today. It seems that this really serious thing happened, and since they disobeyed his order. So he asked what was going on. The interlocutor dumbfounded him by saying that the delegation of one had brought one. Errol just couldn't believe it. He asked in what sense it had arrived, and the servant said with horror that the agriculturists had threatened to kill him if he did not bring the prince immediately. So he begs the Lord not to leave him to be torn apart. The boy raised that the dwarves had indeed arrived, but why so quickly? Soon he was thinking that he was glad, in any case, that they had at least agreed to help. We should proceed according to the plan, and for the moment it was better not to be lazy. But anyway, he didn't think she'd be here so soon. It is necessary to receive them with dignity, so I decided to welcome the honored dwarves. Aiken interrupted him and got very close, asking if he was the kid who came up with that. Naturally, Asa didn't like it, so she immediately went over and rounded the old man away from the boy with her spear, saying that was rude, so have him apologize to the prince immediately. The gnome smiled, saying that the energy was really strong for a girl, and she kept insisting with you. He apologized. The boy asked in a whisper not to say such a thing, for the sensible Dharman did not say that it was a very important person. For reference, the concepts of title and status accepted only in human society. Dwarves do not care about these formalities. They would talk to everyone in the same informal way. So the hero asked Asha not to tell them how to behave. Then he thought that it was not worth it to drag out the conversations. If he didn't do something wrong, Asha would eat them alive. So he informed them that he was indeed the author of the blueprint. The dwarves who arrived were surprised. Aiken remarked that it was hard to believe, so they needed something to prove it. If it's some kind of childish joke, it's better to immediately let him show them the person who did it. Then Errol shouted again that this machine was invented by him. I wondered how many times he would have to say that for them to understand. The old man smiled, saying that he was a weak child who couldn't even lift young. Let him not make them laugh. These words made the hero angry, and he remarked to Asa to give them heat. She gladly agreed. Tonight's dinner was to consist of gnome sashimi. As a result of this situation, the butler had to intervene. It wasn't long before the dwarves actually realized that he had really worked this blueprint himself. The boy wondered if they didn't believe again. He doesn't understand what he has to do to make them not believe. Hadn't the witnesses already confirmed it to them? He also wondered why this one hadn't arrived so quickly. If he had known, he would have greeted them appropriately. They would have taken a break. At least they would have gotten some fresh air. Aiken didn't want a vacation, so he asked if he understood correctly that he wanted them to build him this thing. The boy pointed out that it was true. Unfortunately, they didn't have enough skilled craftsmen to create it. The old man made it clear, and he said that machining such parts was beyond human hands. Errol realized that he was now bragging about being a dwarf. It was a good thing he had followed Darman's advice. So he said it's true of human brains, at least enough for good ideas. Next, he put his foot on the table looking for what is true genius. He drew this blueprint and realizes that they have doubts. He's actually smart and educated. If they knew how much development he has under his belt, they'd be shocked. Then the interlocutor said that he believed him, judging by his oddities. But enough of the chatter. Errol thought that was great. The only way to convince a proud man is to become one yourself, so it's a done deal. So I thought I'd tell you what you wanted to start with next. But Akin interrupted him again and stated that he may not continue. They had already made up their minds since they had come to him, so they would get to work. The boy asked if they had not even discussed the cost right away. Would they be happy with any conditions? The interlocutor said that they only do work that they like. He's going to be on the plus side, because he needs this car. And they'd be looking at other geniuses' designs. After saying that, the hero realized they were already on his hook. He stated that this is really not the only drawing that he would like to show them. The interlocutor noted that he was not implying anything, but still, he had a look of joy for the rest of them right now. From what he saw, the boy wondered if that look was full of passion. So he said since they're so eager, it's fine with him. They deliver the necessary blueprints, told them to look closely. Akin immediately held out his hand and told him to give them to him. But the prince smiled and declared not so fast. The old man was naturally very angry about this, so he tried to grab him. But when nothing came of it, again shouted for you to give him that blueprint quickly. And the hero pointed out that this was not going to happen. First let them assemble him the parts, according to the blueprint he sent them, and then show him the rest. The interlocutor just couldn't believe it. Arel stated that the trust of a genius still had to be earned. The old man was angry, of course, but he understood everything perfectly. Further stated that he only waited a little while. He would create this thing in no time. The Lord was pleased by this, and asked if they liked his blueprint so much. Next, I thought about it. I wanted to show them the whole plan of building the car at once, but changed my mind. He'll use it as bait. I'm sure they'll work twice as fast then. He's a genius now that he's come up with such a bait for the dwarves. There it is, his dark side, and everything is going according to plan. After a little while, the tired dwarves showed up to announce that they had done everything. The boy got excited and gave them the blueprint. They arrived quickly again and said everything was ready. Arel gave them the next drawing again and praised them. But he asked if they were awake at all. The next time he was in the bath, the dwarves broke in and demanded the next blueprint. And it happened time after time in the strangest of places. After a while, Akin informed Orel that they had done what he had ordered. The hero couldn't understand why he had such a scary look on his face. It was understandable, though, since they had completed the design in less than 10 days. And the paper production line was ready. Then the prince asked what about the fruits of their labors. The interlocutor remarked that he had only glanced at the remarkably clean sheets of paper. Looked at them, the gentleman said what a great guy he was, so cool the whole thing came up. He realized, unlike ordinary paper, which craftsmen listen to by hand one sheet at a time, he created a machine that stamps it in reams, moreover with perfect white color. Lucky that there is plenty of wood in this region, and he would easily make his mill to create paper as well. Eventually, the old man asked if the kid was satisfied with everything. Arel noted that he was more than satisfied, and now he needed a few more of these machines. He thought it was only a matter of time before his moisture hit the shelves around the world. All that remained was to establish trade, and there would be money to be made on paper. Soon a man was brought to the boy. He greeted Prince Errol and asked if perhaps he should call him Lord Fahilia. The title really suits him, and his mom asked him to come here. The hero again that it's true he wrote to her about it. He was looking for someone from Mama Einrest's family to entrust with the paper sales job. In the end, the uncle was the first to respond. People he can trust this relative on his mom's side of the family. The man who arrived asked what product he wanted to sell. The prince showed the paper and asked what he had to say about it. The interlocutor looked at her carefully, saying that it was paper. He went on to say, to be honest, if the boy released this paper for sale, there could be a real scandal. After all, he wants to sell a higher quality analog at cheaper prices, and competitors will bill it in fury. The demand for the paper has been growing lately. Consequently, its price has also skyrocketed, all because of the bloody creation process. It is being bought up faster and faster, and the price continues to rise. Even he recently barely managed to buy some for a very round sum, and the item is almost like a luxury. The hero realized that this is the time for great stories. The man continued to worry about the idea, but Errol asked not to worry. Customers would have no reason to complain about them. Their paper is a brand new product, different from others. Uncle realized that providing people with a better product, without any markup, is such a unique production system beyond competition. But if ever a more perfect product than this one, soon he informed me that he would make a sales plan right away. Thanks to the low price, they would organize sales even where paper is only dreamed of. Hearing these words, the hero thought that he was just a born salesman. He'll definitely be able to trust this man, so it's time to make some money. After a little while, my uncle informed me that he had automated the method for extracting paper. The dwarves in turn built them several more of these machines. The protagonist is out that you're holding the dwarves. And notice that it's been less than 24 hours since the design was completed. And they're already coming back. Perhaps at least they could celebrate a little and have a nice dinner. Aiken shouted that they had a lot of work to do. It was their apprentice's job, of course, but it was better to go back and see to it. He further asked the boy not to be bored. If there are any more inquiries, let him boldly apply. For good work, they would come any time. After saying goodbye, Errol thought they would at least celebrate together. He definitely couldn't do the job without them. In any case, he is very grateful for their help and need you to already start selling the paper. When the sale was launched, buyers did realize that it was a brand new paper. The ink doesn't smudge and the paper doesn't even tear. The quality of this paper is truly amazing, and at a nice price too. The aristocrats were discussing the fact that a new one had been made in Fahilia. Though not long ago, a new lord had been appointed there. It is said that with no single paper alone he glorified that area, but also paved the roads there. Truly, this fellow, genius, young lord is working so hard to surprise this frozen land. So the aristocrats decided to buy more of this paper. Soon the new paper arrived to the emperor as well. Whereupon he noticed that the material for the documents had changed. So he turned to the butler and asked if he knew anything about it. It must be some new kind of paper. The old man pointed out that it is true it is a novelty on the market, and the price is pleasantly pleasing. Because of its good quality, the nobles had switched to this kind of paper. Theorel wondered where it came from. The interlocutor surprised him by bringing her from Fahilia. His Majesty realized that this seemed to be the case of a common son. The servant remarked that he had just asked him to tell him that from this year Fahilia would pay taxes. This surprised the emperor, and he asked if they had such a good income. It is interesting that in such a short period of time, his son was able to revitalize the economy. Although the land there is very harsh, it could not break his will. The main character was lying in his bed at this time, doing nothing. He got the strong feeling that someone was thinking of him, probably praising him. While it's true he's doing well, he's made so much money developing the paper that he can afford to drink sweet honey all he wants. That said, it was enjoyable and very tasty. The eldest son of the emperor and empress remarked to his mother that today's tea smells very nice. It is different from the tea they usually drink. The woman smiled, asking if he had noticed. It was a courtesy gift from the emperor's youngest son in exchange for the fur coat she had given him. The son smiled and said that Fahilia was all as dead as far as he was concerned. The woman noted that she did, but her hands were shaking with anger as well. The guy asked if she was all right since she looked kind of pale. Elia reported that everything was fine. There was just one jewel here that she didn't like. So much so that it makes you want to destroy her. She doesn't even shine and there is no nobility. But she's got a lot of nerve. Son didn't quite understand how jewelry could be bold, so reported it might be worth replacing. I'm sure she has plenty of jewelry. The empress noted that she had already replaced her, but it keeps getting in the way. Plus it continues to irritate her even more. But let him ignore that. She wondered if he liked the sword she'd given him. Zale admitted that he liked it very much, because it had been made especially for him by the dwarf and fit his hand perfectly. His mother had made it easier for him to handle the weapon. The woman realized that it was true. The sword was not cheap. Next, she stood up and said, "That's great. He is, after all, the crown prince who is to inherit the throne. Of course, he needs the perfect sword. He must always live and think like an emperor." The son remarked that he understood everything. After tea, he departed, leaving the empress alone. A good line drew attention to the cookies. Next, I noticed that everyone liked the paper developed in Fahilia so much. She still continues to hear the prince's name. And that is simply an insult to their family. The queen's real name is Aelia Pratt. Duke Pratt's family was the only family of merchants that produced paper. Even abroad, they had but two competitors. The first was paper from the Maritime Empire, and the second was from the East. After the war with the former, paper developed there was banned from being produced here, but the second competitor, Duke Pratt's, overbought, monopolizing the industry. Realizing this, Elias shouted that they had paid a lot of money to recreate an exclusive product not for everyone. On that little girl suddenly decided to create something new. All this is happening because of this worthless boy is incomprehensible. How dare Arel do all this? Next, the woman made a decision to do something. So I took the ink and only started writing messages from the paper. And when she was done, she said she couldn't wait any longer. At night, a carriage arrived at one place and a gentleman got out of it. And when he went inside, the manager of the place was overjoyed. It was the same man who sold the protagonist slaves. He greeted the prince and said he hadn't expected to see him here so soon. Errol reported that it had been 6 months, and as he realized, he now needed new slaves. The manager was very happy about this and remarked that they had a very large selection. He also asked if he needed people, without any requirements. The hero noted that this is not true. He needs tough guys, resistant to the cold. Now he is looking for just such real hard-working slaves. The man replied that he would remember that, but wondered what purpose he wanted to use them for. Arel replied that they would be needed for security, while road repairs and paperwork were being made. The soldiers on guard duty were sorely lacking. He knew that the title of Lord was almost equal to that of Earl. With that, the boy could increase the number of soldiers to 50,000 men. And that would probably be enough. The manager inquired as to how much he needed this time. Pointing with his palm, the hero reported that 5,000 men were needed. The interlocutor was discouraged by this amount, and could already feel the money falling into his account. The boy confirmed that he required so much, if they had that much. The man simply blossomed, declaring, of course they would have everything. He would not disappoint the prince, by no means, let him have confidence in him. The boy was once again convinced that money really does work wonders. After a while, he marveled at the skill of the dwarves. It is expensive to create swords of such impeccable quality. Now all that remained was to train the slaves in self-defense. He's ordered a complete set of equipment for them. Making 5,000 of them in such a short period of time was something the lesser brothers could do. The slaves were not enthusiastic, and when they arrived in Fahilia, we need to raise their spirits. Then there will be results. At this time, the commander commanded his subordinates. He declared that they should all salute their great lord. The knights shouted that they would swear allegiance to him for the rest of their lives. The prince only hoped they were strong enough. It should be enough to protect the most important points. Then again, he's done a good job, so maybe he should get some rest. At night, several masked strangers ran through Fahilia. Soon they arrived at the desired location. It was most likely the very same paper mill that should be here. The purpose of the mission of these men is to destroy the factory in Fahilia. It is necessary to remove all the machines without a trace. This will take a huge toll on their economy. The stranger wondered about the owner of the place with no thought at all for his safety. Which means you could say that they have just great ordering conditions. If the mission is successful, he will receive so much money that it will be enough for the rest of his life. He began to command the men who had arrived with him. Turns out there are only 2 guards, and getting rid of them shouldn't be too hard. He ordered them all destroyed, and soon the guards were captured. Of course, no one was going to let them live, so they were eliminated. Next, the mercenaries were going to sneak inside the factory. It was only necessary to deal with the personnel inside and destroy the machines. But suddenly the first person who walked in there was stunned. And that's because he didn't see anything there. On the other hand, he saw some bright light that blinded him. He didn't even notice anything as this guard picked up and was blinded. Then the knights who were defending that place arrived and saw the intruder. They decided to take these very people alive, which they did, and also informed them that if they resisted, they would not be spared. And the chief of the mercenaries thought it was time to leave. But this, of course, he did not succeed, for soon there was a spear near his neck. The man realized that they were in an ambush. But he didn't understand where about 200 soldiers were coming from. According to their data, they shouldn't have been here. At this time, a yawning prince entered the room. He noticed that the factory was under attack after all. When the mercenary saw him, he shouted that he was surrendering because he was just following orders. Arl inquired in that way, wondering if it was easy to understand and forgive him. They trespassed on his property, killed his men, and defaced other people's property, so they don't think they'll get away with it. The boy ordered them to be sent in for questioning and interrogated until he had laid out everything he knew. His personal knights, the order was understood and already prepared for it. The mercenary realized he wasn't well, so begged for mercy, and said he really didn't know anything. Arel didn't care about that. He certainly wasn't in favor of violence. But there are some things that no one can get away with. It's about family and his friends. They are all strangers, and he will not tolerate them getting hurt. These are principles that the boy can't cross, because he's been through this kind of thing many times before. Sometime after the incident, he was sitting in his office. The offenders were interrogated and punished according to the law. They will live as slaves for the rest of their lives, but they really didn't know anything about the customer's identity. So there was no benefit to interrogation. We have to think of something else. I wonder what to do in this situation. At least Arel's got the economy sorted out. We don't have to worry about not having enough money for further settlement. Now he was thinking about the fact that he had a lot on his plate, and it was about time he tried it out. And by he meant the magic circle designed for teleportation. The hero finally did complete it. The price came out, certainly beyond cloudy. After all the constituent parts of the whole creation were magical. But it was worth it. If I didn't have to redo it twice, he wouldn't even whine. But don't think about the sad part. I'm sure it will pay for itself. At least with his help, he'll be able to get home. So next, he began to insert magic stones in the right place. When this did, the energy in a circle began to spread. Then he realized that everything had gone perfectly. That was the end of his part. And the other side was to do the same. The hero turned sideways and motioned for Sister Kanya to begin. Her face at that moment only said that she didn't quite want it. She even asked if she had to go there. The brother pointed out that it was just teleportation. It wouldn't take long to move. Doesn't she feel well? The girl hesitated and asked if it would be okay. She wondered if he thought he would be happy on the other side. Errol reported that they'd just as soon find out, so be focused on teleportation. It's safe, so you shouldn't be nervous. The side effects may only make you a little carsick. The girl was worried, but she agreed. That's when the guy made the decision to start. Magical light and power immediately began to envelop the place. Startled, Kanya asked her younger brother if this was how it was supposed to be. Overexcited, she was choking him hard, and he thought he couldn't breathe anymore. For a few seconds, he literally begged for anyone to save him. She nearly finished him off. But soon all went well, and the princess was delighted to see that it was indeed a palace. Errol came to his senses for a bit, then said they were in place and that was fine. He had said everything was going to be all right after all. After which he began to look around, remembering this time when she and her sister were kids and played here. Those memories or his soul, so he realized he was truly home. Next, I just fell to the ground and was glad to be back here because I missed it so much. He couldn't even believe compared to that cold earth. It was very warm here. Suddenly, the nanny arrived and greeted the prince and princess. The boy greeted her too. Chaina remarked that she was a little worried that she had placed the magic stone incorrectly. The hero pointed out that it was nothing complicated. Even a 10-year-old child could do it. Nanny stated that it was true and said that mistress is waiting for him inside, so asking to go inside. Naturally, Errol agreed. The woman also said that Mrs. Fenelia was also waiting for Lady Kanya. Errol noted, in that case we should split up for now. Let him go and tell his mother, and they would see each other later. The girl agreed, for there was no point in running away from her anyway. The boy was very curious about how his mom was doing. He hoped she hadn't needed anything while he was away. The nanny very kindly opened the door for him. Soon, Lefana was finally able to see her son. Errol missed her so much that he immediately rushed into her arms. Mom was glad he was really up, and also that he stopped by to see her. Also reported that his uncle has written about everything that goes on there, so she knows everything. She is happy that her son is very talented. The hero realized that his uncle told him everything. He's been so overworked lately because of production that he's even lost a little weight. He is, after all, a very hard worker. The boy further informed his mother that he was going to tell her everything that was going on in Fahilia. She didn't mind at all. Errol realized that he had to try to make sure that his mother didn't need anything else. Soon they were sitting at the table, and Errol said that where he lived it snowed all the time, and there were a lot of white rabbits. Mama remarked that that was rather nice. The guy wondered if it really could have been cute, but they were about 3 meters tall. She didn't need to know that, though. In addition to all this, he told her of his progress. He told her about all the animals that lived in the area, including the indigenous people. He told her literally everything that would please his mother. Soon their joyful conversation was interrupted by the clatter of heels. The boy realized that someone was approaching them. And as usual, it happened at the worst possible time. It was the Empress who was surprised that the younger prince had returned. Errol realized, where in fact without her. She pretended to be surprised, even though he'd officially warned her of his impending visit, so she knew that for sure. I wonder what that woman is up to. The Empress had told Lefana that she was glad the younger prince was doing well. The boy wondered what she meant by that. To find out everything he needed to know, he asked how His Majesty was doing. I heard that the eldest prince was doing well too. Elia thanked him for his concern and said that everything was still the same at the palace. Come to think of it, she had heard rumors that the economy was booming in his lands lately. I wondered if it was true. Errol said it was true, and it was thanks to a machine he had developed. The woman has no idea how excited the residents of the Empire were about the new product. This statement naturally did not please the interlocutor. The prince realized she didn't like to hear that. Surely her pride must be hurt by the fact that the prince she was looking at freshly hit the family's business hard. In any case, his new paper is many times better than hers. The woman decided to put oil on the fire by asking if it was safe to deal with the paper. They had heard alarming rumors of robbers. Judging from her words, Errol realized it was her doing it again. He thanked her again for her concern and said that he really hadn't had any problems so far. The Empress remarked that it was only for now, though it was a great honor for the Empire that her children were contributing so much. Next, she turned around and with a sly smile, asked to just be careful. The boy noticed what would be meant and realized it was as if she had threatened him. Mom told her son that the Empress seemed to be in a bad mood today. He noted that perhaps she had something to do with family matters. At that moment, he thought he was accepting a challenge from Aaliyah. Sooner or later, you had to do it anyway. After a while, the boy had to go back to his land. He said goodbye to his mother and told her that he would definitely stop by again. Lefana also said goodbye to him and asked him to be careful. Then the guy asked his sister how her communication with her family was going. She was not in a good mood at all, but said that everything was fine. Next, she hit him, asking him if he was worried about her meeting her mom. In fact, Errol was worried after hearing everything from the maid. He'd thought there would be a fight, but I think he just had a wild fantasy. And while he thought about it for a bit, his sister shouted again for him to move them faster already. After saying goodbye to his mother once more, the boy and his sister soon departed. And so it's only been a few days, and already there's a new problem. And it was that the prince immediately needed a magician. There are good reasons why Errol needs a mage. The first is mages can activate the teleport circle unhindered. A landowner definitely needs a mage on his own territory. They can also help grow various crops with magic, not to mention trees for making paper, so isn't this the perfect helper? But when monsters or enemies attack, the mage's power can be the deciding factor. So now the principal was faced with the question of where to get a universal magician. He decided to find some information in books. But in the end, I found nothing there and only fiddled around for nothing. Turns out that's a real problem, and he doesn't even know what to come up with. Soon there were even thoughts of perhaps abandoning the endeavor. But the nobles all use mages, don't they? And to hire at least one on a permanent basis, you'd have to break the day. To protect such a huge territory, and we'll need to hire a whole magical squad. But there's an important point here. It's all about protecting their paper mill. The warriors are great, but what if some hired wizard attacks? Soldiers are very even, but in this world you need magic power as well. No one ever knows what might happen in the future. In any case, he decided that the wizard was definitely the one to look for, so I started putting together an ad. Soon it was ready. It stated that a court wizard was required. A place to live, a high salary, and career advancement is presented. All necessary resources would also be provided, and a hirer would be signed. Thing is, the guy figured he could send a request to the magic tower, but it's crazy expensive there, right? Influential magical, important, money-hungry. Now he's sure that some free mage will be interested in the ad. Problem solved, and he'd thought of it perfectly. Still, he's fine with a low-level wizard, and he'll make a first-class one himself. He went on to rejoice that he was a genius and the guys should hand out flyers. Across various corners of the empire, the guy's announcements soon went viral. They were hung in prominent places and anyone who wished to view them could see them. Those who saw the ad realized that this is the Fahilia who recently became famous for her paper, and the prince who is always creating something new and making money from it. They have very good conditions, and they are ready to take a newcomer. While people were discussing this, one girl fell to the ground without strength. When she was spotted, they asked if she was okay, but she didn't answer and continued on her way, pushing her way through the crowd, and soon bumped into Errol's ad. There she saw that lodging was provided, so also food. The protagonist was just rejoicing that quite a few Magoo applied. Isn't that perfect? Wish he could hire them all and create an army. He's small, but no way yet. Decided to see what to do and probably need to set up an interview. He would test their powers personally. But it was also important that they not become his enemies in the future. The first thing to do is to make sure that he can trust them completely. If there was even the slightest doubt, they should be weeded out at once. In that, he ordered his subordinate to check everyone, and he understood everything. After a while, it was that day of the interview for mages with immaculate backgrounds. It was very boring for the guy, much more boring than when he was choosing knights, and he splurged quite a bit on the action. There are 12 magicians in all. The prince said he chose them after reviewing all of their resumes, and now they would be working for him. The middle class of these third-level wizards, the boy hoped he had made the right choice. He said that from now on he will give them assignments and teach them new skills. Mostly, they are required to take care of the forest and fields, as well as guarding the territory. Their wishes are also taken into account, so he asked to listen carefully. First of all, he's going to choose the person in charge, so he asked the fourth-level mages to raise their hands. Hands were raised by only 2 people, one of them a man called Manka Blob, and also a girl named Dia Lecky. Seeing the 2 candidates in front of the guy's eyes, there was only a man. He tried with all his might not to think of him or judge people by their appearance. It's the skills of his subordinates that matter. But soon he ran up to the girl and wished her well on the new one, appointing her his personal mage. Don't think that Errol chose her for nothing. There's another reason he chose her, and it happened the day of the interview. It was just about to be Dia Leka's turn. The prince said with a resume like hers, she could have found a much better offer. Then I wonder what she was interested in up north. She was a little surprised at the question, and said she wanted to serve the prince. Those present looked at her in surprise, as in fact, Errol was surprised. After all, he realized that usually an employee was interested in salary or opportunities, and she was talking about service to the prince. So he asked if that was really the reason for her request. The girl only hardener for hire nodded. Errol realized she had no malicious intent, so really sincerely wants to serve. In that case, he should have taken her in. Presently, he was about to explain to the wizards their duties and all the benefits they would receive. He's going to start, of course, with a good thing. Altogether, they entered a rather beautiful room with many books. The wizards trembled with excitement here, thinking, isn't this a dream? The protagonist understood their surprise. Because there's a whole library of magic books here. This is the literature recommended directly by the Tower of Magicians. Fortunately, the books themselves are inexpensive. It was much more difficult to negotiate the magical tower. He hoped these books would make his wizards stronger. There are mostly mages here, not honored to work at the tower in exiles. Without the prince's help, it's unlikely they would have gotten stronger and developed further. So they would probably be glad to have this opportunity. The mages asked if it was true. They could use them all. The master said that was correct. He would check their progress, so let them try to tighten up their knowledge. And while they rejoiced, he pondered that his goal was actually somewhat different. He's going to use them to learn magic. Also, knowing these basics, the only thing left to do is to delve deeper into the study. The more bright minds, the easier it will be. So we need to give it our best shot. The first thing he did was to send the wizards into the forest and tell them to restore it. I realized that too much forest has been cut down, which is the source of wood for paper. This needs to be fixed. So the prince asked if his subordinates could revive the trees. They agreed to do so and proceeded to do so. Each of them began to recite spells that were supposed to help with this. And soon the protagonists saw the tree growing, which means everything is working out. So it's not just magic power being used here, but a whole ritual is needed. I wonder if they can really influence the growth process. He further remarked, after all, nothing compares to magic. But is it possible to grow trees faster from scratch? The interlocutor stated, honestly, if you do it that way, the soil will dry out quickly and it needs a resting period. Better to leave it like that for at least a month, and then at least you might recover. The boy realized that indeed environmental problems have not been cancelled. It is good that this world is not without prudent people. His subordinates informed him that he was grateful for their labor. They then moved on to the second equally important issue, and that help in growing crops. The people of the family name can't rely on one hunt forever. So there's a need to harvest crops. The enchantress asked if it was simply to accelerate the growth of culture here. The prince said that ideally the growth of crops in all 12 villages should be accelerated, which dumbfounded his interlocutors. And to calm them down a bit, he said that it will not be at the same time, because he is not such a pervert. He just asked them to help the villagers to create the right conditions. Showing the necessary on a piece of paper, he asked if such norms were possible. The sorceress reported that if they used weather magic, they might be able to make it. But a colleague remarked that they needed to save mana. Then the principal showed them the magical tools for the job and asked them to look at them. He, along with his subordinates, began to place these items. Speaking of which, here they will be separated from the cold by a magical barrier. It will be left with only sunlight and warmth to grow crops. A little time passed, and Errol stated that everything seemed to be working out. The only thing left to do is to pull this trick in every village. So suggest taking care that you play, or don't starve. After that, the two mages went to the magic item research department. 3 of them were appointed guards of the palace and estates. In the end, all that was left was Dialeki. She asked the gentleman what she should do. The boy pointed out that she would be his personal escort. She would accompany him and run errands. He thought about the fact that he couldn't use magic in plain sight yet, so a magical assistant was needed. The first assignment he gave the girl was to improve her magical skills with the help of books. She informed him that she understood everything. If it was the prince's will, she would do her best. He liked that kind of passion for his work. Errol felt she was speaking sincerely, but wondered what her reasons were. While he was thinking about it, a book fell to the ground about the girl. He turned his attention to it and marveled. It was his book, The Path to the Heights of Chivalry. But it was unclear why his image was there. I remember he actually wrote a book about training for knights. It was not widely distributed, as the soldiers did not understand it. He asked Dialeka why there was little of something like that. The girl replied that an acquaintance had given it to her to read. Mage and knight control the mana originally put in them, and the only difference is the amount of mana. The mana management system for mages is no different, so the boy's theory fits them just fine.